everyone, it's time for another video. Today's painting is for a very special occasion. It's Brittany's birthday, and her friends are going to be following along with this one. So happy birthday, Brittany. I hope you're all excited for this one. Today's painting is called
Lake Huron Sunrise.
Okay, make sure that you rinse off your brush after you've mixed your paint here. So you want to rinse it off so you have a clean start. And we're going to grab some of the lighter orange that we just made. And I'm going to make a line across the canvas about in the middle, a little bit lower than the halfway point. Get that all the way across. And from there on up, I'm just going to paint that lighter orange on top of that line. And you're going to want to start adding in some white. So all I'm doing is pulling some of the white off of the main section here. And I'm going to go right on top of what I just made and sweep that all the way across. Adding that white will lighten up that top area. And what we're going for is just keep on adding a little more white each time. And you really want to brighten that up towards the top of this section. I'm going to take just a little, very little amount of the blue, add it to that white there, and you can see you really only need a very small amount of blue mixed in with that. And you want to start off very light, so if it looks a little bit too dark, you want a lot more white with it. And from there I'm just going to start brushing it on top of the white that I have where I left off at the top. Alright, so real light still. And then as I go up the canvas, I'll just go ahead and darken that a little bit more. Just remember that there is a lot of white paint mixed in with this blue. Even though the top gets a little bit darker, it's still a very light blue. And that's the main section, that's the main layout of the sky. I rinsed off my brush again to get all that light blue off the brush, and this time I'm going to be starting on the water, and I'm going to need that darker orange that we mixed together earlier. Remember, you don't want it too dark, so if you need to lighten it, just add a little more yellow to it. And I'm going to try to draw the straightest line that I can all the way across. Alright, so now after I get that darker orange on there, I'm going to start working my way to the lighter blue. I'm not going to rinse off my brush. We're just going to take a little bit of that light blue we have left over from the sky and start brushing that in there. So it's not going to look very blue at first. You got that in-between color going on. It might look a little bit green, and that's okay. If it looks too green, you can rinse off your brush and just try again. You don't want it to be like a real bright green or anything like that. Make some more light blue if you have to. And just keep on going down the canvas. The darker orange section, and then it goes, it blends a bit, and then we go to the light blue. So you want to blend that together a little bit more. The way you do that is you can go back to the dark orange. You don't really have to rinse off the brush again, just get more of the dark orange on there, and then I'm holding my brush flat way so you get the thinner lines. When you're filling this all in, you can hold it vertical and get those broad strokes, but when you are doing these little thin lines for waves, make sure you hold that flat brush horizontal ways, and you can also switch to that smaller round brush if you would like. But once you add in a few of these little darker orange lines in here for the waves, it will blend these two colors together a little bit better. Alright, so on the other hand, you can also add in some light blue again and go up into the darker orange with the light blue, creating a few more of these waves in here. That way we really get away from that thing about the dark orange and light blue sections just kind of standing off on their own. This is really going to bring it together. Just keep in mind that the top of this is really far away, so you don't want to do anything too big up here. You don't want to do really big paint strokes. And then finally I might darken up the orange up here just a little bit more. You can always mix together some more of that dark orange. If it looks too much like the sky, you just want to make sure that at least that very top part of it is darker than the sky so that you can really see it stand out. So I'm back to the smaller round brush, and before I do these trees, I'm going to make the tree trunks. You can do as many trees as you want. I think I'm going to do about 5 or 6 here, but I like to do a line for each of the tree trunks here. And that way you can kind of tell how tall they are and the placement. And then once you get towards the edge of the land here, I'm going to do a few smaller trees. So now that I have my tree trunks there, I'm going to take a little more black paint, and you want to start off these are evergreen trees, and the most important part is you want to make sure that the top of these are really pointy. So I'm just going to do a few little paint strokes on either side, and I like to think of it as like an arrowhead. And then after that I'll come back and start the rest of the tree. I'm going to paint a little bit on each side, and take your time with it. You don't want to get too wide before you get to the ground. For the reflection in the water, we're going to take some of that darker orange that we made in the beginning, and you want to add some more black to that. We're going to have a very, very dark orange color, close to black, but not quite black. Okay, so we just got done with the black section on the trees. So I'm going to go below here and do the reflection, and you want just a very, very dark orange so that it's a little bit different from what we already have on the canvas. And as I paint this section of land under here, the reflection of it, I'm going to leave just a little bit of a gap of that bright orange in between the land and the reflection. And just as you're doing this shape, doesn't have to be an exact copy of it. It is an upside down version of what we just did, but it doesn't have to be exactly the same. And the water is a little bit wavy, so you can add a few rough edges in there. But generally I like to move in a back and forth direction, keep it horizontal, and that way it'll flow with the waves better. And when I get that land done, I'm going to look at my trees and just try and figure out how far down you go. A good indicator is if you just measure, say, the top of the tree to the bottom of the land or close to it, and then follow that down. That's about how tall you want it. Also, you can always flip it sideways or upside down if that helps you out. And I'm just going to do a little, almost like a tornado shape, so right under the tree. And that's going to be your reflections for the trees. Keep in mind the next one isn't as tall, so it's not going to go down as far. Okay, now I'm going to do the other side over here. The land is going to be off in the distance. So I'm going to go with the darker orange like we had before, and I'll trace out the shape of the land. Now this is farther away, so I'm just going to rest this right on top of the horizon line. So I'm not going to go below the water when I do that top line. But when you go back with the bottom line, you can go down into the water just a little bit. And I'll go ahead and fill that in. Okay, so this land is more in the background, and that lighter color will make it look more faded into the distance here. Once you do that, we're going to make this look like it has a bunch of trees on it. It's super far away though, so we're just doing vertical paint strokes. I'm using the tip of my brush, like holding the brush vertical, so it gives you more of a tree shape. I'm just doing a bunch of little paint dabs along here. And once you get that done, that's the lighter color. I'm going to grab some black and a little more red. And I'll go through here and add some shadow. You don't want to go all the way up to the top with this. But I'm doing it down below on top of what I just did. It's okay if it's still wet. But that will give us some shadow in here. Then I'm going to do a similar thing down here below. Leave that little bit of a bright orange in between the land and the reflection. And then try to do your best to match the reflection with what the top of the land looks like. And you can do this however you want. It doesn't have to be the same shape. And then once I get that bottom part of the reflection on there, I'm going to add a little more black to that mix, and I'm just going to add some variations to it. Once you get that done, I'm going to add more black to it, and the darkest part is going to be on the bottom part of this land here. I'll go ahead and add a lot of shadow to that. I still have that small round brush, and I'm going to go back to my land right here that I did in all black paint, and I'm going to add some dark green, and I'm going to use that to paint in the grass in this section. And I'm going to paint this on the top part, so you don't want to fill in the whole thing with it, but maybe just have a little bit of the grass showing up better with the screen. You don't have to worry about any of the trees. They're up in the light, so you want to keep them pretty dark since there's that bright light right directly behind them. And for the grass, I'm going to keep it on the side closer to the sun. Once you get over here, you can do either a little bit darker green or just kind of fade that off. So I have my small round brush. I'm going to use some black paint at first to get this started with, and I'm going to draw a little line just somewhere around this area of the canvas. Make sure it's not too high. Maybe about, maybe in the middle of the water here. And I'm just going to draw a little line, maybe an inch or so. Then I'm going to make another line that comes down to almost the corner. And on the other side, I'm going to make this line come to a little above the corner. It's actually going off the canvas on the right side. Once I have that down, you can take all black and I'll fill that whole shape in. Finally, I'm going to add some little posts to this at the end. I'll flatten out that line a little bit. If you need to tweak anything, if you need to smooth anything out, feel free to do that. And I'm going to do these little lines towards the end of the dock here. So they go up above the dock, and then we're going to have a little bit below that. Here's my other one, the top section of it. And the other one is hidden. I'm going to put another support under on this side. And finally I'll do maybe one more at the end here. Going back to a brown or a darker orange, I'm going to use a small brush still and just kind of brush in some of this color down where the dock is. This is going to be like the top of the dock, the little boards going across. And you want to make sure you leave some black in there for some shadow. Finally, I'll go ahead and just add a few more, a little more light orange on this part, so maybe some of the sun is hitting it. Now I'm going to add the boat in here, so I got like a little rowboat with a guy in there. Alright, so now I'm adding in the boat. It's just like a little rowboat. And if you want to use a smaller detail brush for this, you can. But the front of the boat, make sure that's a little more pointed in the front. And then the back is just squared off. You got a straight line down. I'll fill that in. Draw a little guy in here. It's just a little dot and a line. He's just kind of hanging out there. And then finally, just a little hint of a reflection. As always, I'm going to add, leave a little bit of a space in between that. I'm just using black for this one. And I'm just going to do a few little lines down here. And then make it go a little bit lower for that person in the boat. Just a real simple reflection. You don't have to get too detailed with that. Alright, so just a little light blue. You're going to have a little bit more blue in it this time. And mix that with some of our dark orange or brownish color that we had before. I'm going to go right below here. If you want to do a line right along the left side of the dock here, that's a good start because it's going to be a pretty dense shadow right below there. And then from then you can just kind of do little paint strokes coming out here for the rest of that reflection there. And then have a little bit coming out down from the posts. A few little dots and dashes there. And then keep on flicking out a few little paint strokes underneath here for that shadow and the reflection. Alright, and that'll make it look like there's some space in between the dock and the water. Alright, here is our finished painting. I hope you all had a fun time painting this. Happy birthday, Brittany. And I'll see you next time.